This Defeating Adventism number 53 is, of course, immediately following 52, and you're going to see why for obvious reasons. So I originally bought this book. This is a very recent Seventh-day Adventist book. I bought it off the Seventh-day Adventist website. I forget what the copyright date is here. It tells me it's 2017, but it's being sold as a new children's book on the Adventist Book Center website. I originally bought it because the video that precedes this video was on this book from 1975, and I thought I'm going to buy this new one and read it along with this one from 1975, and probably do a video together on both of them because probably the content's the same. It wasn't exactly the same. This book's a lot thicker, a lot more content than this one from 1975. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to add these two together. This one deserves its own video because it has much more content than that 1975 book. But you know what I did here too? After I read this book, well, by the way, here's the author, which you're going to see here in a minute. That's what it says about him. Jerry D. Thomas serves as Vice President for Product Development at Pacific Press. Okay, Vice President of Product Development. You would think he knows what he's talking about. We'll see here. Maybe he does, and that's part of the problem too. What I did before I even did this video, I went onto the author's website, where he's authored numerous other children's books. Sent him 2 emails and said, hey, you got to have some answers for me here on these books. Look with me here on his website. So here's his official website, which you can see that I viewed on November of 2021, where I got his contact information from. And then, look here, here's the first email I sent him. I asked him just 2 questions. One was on his book here, and you're going to see this in the video, on the first vision of Ellen White, which I always find interesting because Adventism changed that vision because of the shut door doctrine when they republished it in the 1882 early writings. So I asked him that question. Then you can look down and you can see the other question I asked him had to do with about Jesus dying for sins, and that is clearly not taught in Adventism. Well, that was October 14th of 2021. Needless to say, I didn't get an answer. So, I did it again. November 6th, 2021. One last time. I said, look, I'm reaching out to you one last time. I'm going to give you a chance to explain, Mr. Author, of these two. I do so as evidence, as you can see there, to prove that you were afforded a right to respond. He chose not to respond. I got, you know what, a comment I make all the time on Adventists on YouTube, a religion not worth defending is a religion not worth having. So Mr. Thomas obviously doesn't want to defend his religion nor defend his book. So the video goes forward. Let's look inside this book and see what's being taught to the children. All right, so let's look at what's being taught to children in this book here that you see here by Mr. Thomas, the one I just held up, who was Ellen White. And we're going to start in the very beginning, like so many other videos I do. By the way, let me just say this before I go any further. There's so much material I am just air quotes leaving on the table that I just want to address because this is a target-rich environment. But anyway, let's proceed. What's he say here? Notice how this is the note for grown-ups. It says, if we want them, children, to become lifelong Adventists with faith in the Bible and in our church's doctrines. I read that and I went, read that again. Faith in the Bible and our church's doctrines. Faith in the Bible and church's doctrines are 2 distinctly different things. And when I read that, I went, yeah. He just said the quiet part out loud. The doctrines of the church are separate and distinct from faith in the Bible. But again, those of us that are outside of Adventism already know that. But let's continue here. He says something else here. He says, finally, and most important, that this book can help children build faith in God's church and his prophet. Well. Let's look at God's so-called prophet in this book.
So he does this introduction here. Who's Ellen White? And he's talking to the kids. Yeah, people at our church, they talk a lot about this lady Ellen White, and he's going to say, and this book is supposed to answer, why do we still listen to things she had to say? Honestly, I don't know. Honestly, you shouldn't, because much of what she says is completely unbiblical. But again, this is an Adventist book, and we're going to talk about Adventism. So let's just start here. Jump to page 17. Talks about one of her visions. You see this vision here. In her vision, Ellen saw people who believed in Jesus' return, or Advent as it was so called. She saw them moving along a path to heaven. The ones who kept believing kept moving, etc. Some people fell off. They can get back on the path. And you know, this is the first vision. And you can see here, this is Defeating Adventism number 25. I did a video on this, and this is one of the things you saw in the letter that I sent to the author originally, in which he didn't answer. Of course, I don't really expect him to say in this book that he put the wrong first vision in the one from the Day Star or the one from Early Writings. But you know what I do expect? After all, what's it say on the back of the book? He's VP of Product Development for Pacific Press. You ought to know what your prophet taught, right? You ought to know that her first vision has been altered. So look what they're teaching the kids. They're actually not teaching them the truth about Ellen White. They're teaching them this altered vision of hers. So let's continue. Now we're going to jump to page 26. Ellen White and her visions. God showed her a wonderful story he's talking about. And then look down here. Ellen told James about the vision. She had seen the time before God created the earth. Oh, yeah, she did. And it's called Defeating Adventism number 45, where I have the Great Council of Gods comparison between the Latter-day Saint or Mormon Council of Gods and the Seventh-day Adventist Council of Gods. This whole pre-creation thing. As a matter of fact, this whole idea of Satan and Jesus and the conversations that they have that's not in the Bible. By the way, Adventists, don't tell me you believe in sola scriptura, because this account, not in the Bible. There is no sola scriptura in Adventism. It's gone. Watch Defeating Adventism number 45. By the way, all these videos that I'm going to reference here will be in the show notes with links to them. Let's continue. Here's Ellen White here. Praying, and what does he say on page 27? She saw that when he died on the cross, every person who believed in him could be saved from sin. Now, when I first read this in this book, I was like, this is really what made me search for him, find him, and say, why did you put this in here? Because your 28 Beliefs book does not say this. It actually denies Jesus dying on the cross for sins. Why? Because Jesus can't die on the cross for sins. Jesus is atoning for sins in your heavenly sanctuary. So it can't happen on the cross, because if it happened on the cross, we wouldn't need a heavenly sanctuary. And you can see I did 2 videos on that, Defeating Adventism numbers 10 and 12, on the fake Adventist Jesus. Jesus did not die on the cross for sins in Adventism. And that is just one of many reasons why I often say Adventism is heresy of the rankest order. This was pretty interesting too in this account here, is that when she's getting this vision that no one on the train could see him, but Satan was there too. Oh, so there's Ellen White praying and Satan standing right next to her. Just bizarre. Just to be clear, here's Patriarchs and Prophets, page 357. Look what Ellen White wrote. The blood of Christ, while it was to release the repentant sinner from the condemnation of the law, was not to cancel sin. But keep reading. Sin would stand on record in the sanctuary until the final atonement. You see what Ellen White has just done here? She has placed the atonement of sin in the heavenly sanctuary, not on the cross of Christ. And for that, Ellen White is a heretic of the rankest order. Let's continue in this book. Oh boy. When Satan learned that Ellen had seen God's plan to save his people, he decided he's got to stop her before she writes it in a book. Really? Satan is intimidated by Ellen White and has to stop her from writing it down? Is this author so ignorant of the Bible that he does not know Genesis 3:15, the very first prophecy of Christ. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He shall bruise your head, and you're just going to bruise his heel. No, we don't need to be worried about Satan being afraid of Ellen White. Satan knew in the garden, in Genesis, Christ was coming. Again, another heretical statement in an Adventist book. Then he goes on to say here on page 35, well, Ellen, what? As they, Ellen's children, and we all know that she had some young boys, she wrote letters to those young boys, to Edson and Willie. And then what's our author say about Ellen? He ends all of his chapters like this with the title of the book, Who was Ellen White? Who was Ellen White? Well, she was a mother of 4 boys, and she loved each one very much. Yeah, so let me share some of the love of Ellen with you guys right now. And just watch the video preceding this, Defeating Adventism number 52. Look at this quote here in an appeal to youth. The Lord loves those little children who try to do right, and he has promised that they shall be in his kingdom, but wicked children God does not love. The God of Ellen White is a hater of children. He will not take them to the beautiful city, for he only admits good, obedient, and patient children. If you're bad, you're going somewhere else, I guess eternal annihilation. But if you're good, you get to go to heaven. And if you're not good, God doesn't like wicked children. Wow. But watch Defeating Adventism number 52 for more on what I call Wicked Ellen in that video. Here's a page here on page 40 talking about visions. It says, although his life, I'm talking about James White, he worked hard with Ellen to spread the good news. He worked so hard. He died in 1881. He got sick and died. And Ellen missed him a lot. You know what? Ellen White missed him so much that watch Defeating Adventism 40, because Ellen White, the prophet, was engaged in spiritualism or talking to the dead. Just look at this slide here in the center where we have the little seance taking place where they're talking to the dead. Ellen White, in effect, did exactly the same thing, talking to the dead. Here it is, retirement years, page 161. Ellen dreams of and meets James White after the funeral and his death, and she's talking about him. And he gives her advice, and she follows that advice. Ellen White is engaged in spiritualism. Period. Well, you know what I got to say about this book and all the false doctrine that's in it, and all the false doctrine you've just seen? Leviticus 18:21. Do not give your children to Molech, a false god, and profane the name of your God. And God in Leviticus says, I am the Lord your God. You know what? Giving this book to Adventist kids and teaching what's inside of it, and even what I didn't discuss, is the equivalent of giving your children over to a false god. Because there is a false god, and that false god is expressed in Seventh-day Adventism. It's no different than throwing your baby onto the heated metal arms of Molech and sacrificing your child. You're sacrificing your child to Adventism. So Adventists, those of you that are questioning the doctrines within Adventism, you really need to read the Bible and the Bible alone and get out of Adventism. It is indeed leading you astray.